What scares me is that when the kids leave school, they get into a world that no longer applies like that. So they're ill-equipped. And we're not brave enough to ask the question. And I think it's largely driven by fear, not rank conservatism. I think it's fear. Because if you let go and let schools and let teachers and let kids imagine their own future, we lose some control. That's making people fearful. In whom will they place their trust to educate kids in this country?
Welcome to Future Fit Leadership, a podcast for leaders at every stage who want to stay relevant in a world that keeps changing. Leadership has shifted. The pace is faster, the expectations are higher, and the future is calling for a different kind of leader. One who is human-centered, grounded, and able to balance capability with empathy. These conversations bring together global perspectives on the skills and mindsets that help people and organizations thrive. Hello and welcome to Future Fit Leadership. I hope wherever you are listening to this podcast, you are well. There are conversations that stay with you long after the microphones are turned off. Because when you sit with someone like Phillip Heath, someone who has given his life to shaping young people and building communities grounded in kindness, you feel the weight of what our kids are carrying today, and you also feel hope. We talk about leadership a lot on this podcast, but today we talk about something far more delicate, bullying. The kind that happens in classrooms and playgrounds, and the kind that happens silently in the palm of a hand through a screen. The kind that follows young people home and into the night, and the kind that has taken too many young lives. Phillip meets this reality with honesty and a deep, unmistakable tenderness for the students in his care. Listening to him describe the handwritten birthday cards he delivers to each child, you can just see him walking into a classroom, card in hand, stopping for a moment to say, "You matter, you belong, you are worth celebrating." It is such a small gesture on the surface, yet it tells a whole story about the world he is trying to build. And it could not be more timely. Australia recently banned social media for under 16s, and whatever debate sits around it, there is a quiet relief in knowing we have taken a step finally in the direction of protecting children. Limiting one of the biggest accelerants of harm in their lives feels like an overdue breath out. In this conversation, Phillip takes us inside the heart of a school community trying to create safety and dignity for every student. He speaks openly about the loneliness some children feel, the cruelty they sometimes face, and the systems we need to design so no child falls through the cracks unnoticed. He shares what kindness looks like in practice, not as a slogan, but as an everyday act of leadership. And he reminds us that education is not only about the curriculum and credentials, it is about shaping humans, helping them become people who we know they are, what they stand for, and how to treat one another. This reminded me that leadership at its best starts early in life, shaped by the adults who show us who we can become. Please enjoy this conversation with the remarkable Phillip Heath, a leader who is quietly and powerfully changing lives, one child at a time. Well, hello, Phillip. Welcome to Future Fit Leadership. It is wonderful to have you on. We've had a couple of false starts, but I'm really pleased to have you here today. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Sadhana. And I'm incredibly touched to have such an august topic and to speak such an important conversation that may reach many.
Well, I think education is a critical conversation for us. I look at teachers and you bring up and teach the youth of tomorrow and the leaders of tomorrow. And I think, you play such a critical role in community and in our kids' lives. And that you've dedicated your life to education. Looking back on this, what made you step into this space?
It's a long story, which I shall make as brief as I can. I'm very conscious that I have the privilege of touching the future every day. And that what we say and do now matters for decades to come, long after the incident or the encounter is forgotten by many of us. The impression that it leaves on a young life will resonate. We all reflect back on our school days, those were seminal moments for us. The people who, maybe the adults who are involved in those, have no memory of those things. For us, they take on an incredibly important role in the sense of understanding who we are as humans and our interaction with the world. It took me a long time to figure that out. I discovered that I liked being around young people. I enjoyed the community of a school. I loved teaching. My subject matter was history, and it made a lot of sense to me. I enjoyed writing and communication. I enjoyed the sports. I enjoyed music, theatre, and the kinds of things that go to make a school community. Over time, however, that became more refined. So there was a question about why would I go into that world when having my own school years were not particularly happy ones, I have to say. But why did I go into that world in the first place was those things. I discovered an aptitude for it. And then I discovered that first point I was making, that you can actually touch the future. And there are not many worlds of work where you get to do that.
So true.
And in a communal sense, to create meaning and purpose in a community and help somebody to imagine that meaning and purpose in their own lives. That's an amazing privilege.
Now, you're known for leading with conviction and compassion, and I've done the research on you, and it's really interesting. And I want to talk about some of the things that are unique to what you do in your school. Yeah. What keeps you grounded and focused on the future?
I'm very conscious of my frailties, that in some ways, by virtue of historical circumstances, I have got into places that I might not have otherwise thought that I would ever enter. And that's made me wake every day with a sense of gratitude and humility and an enormous, almost compelling sense of opportunity that creates. That there is something remarkable in the unique set of circumstances that drew me to this moment, to this hour, and I don't want to waste a second of it.
Yeah.
But I grew up in what would, I suppose, be in many ways a vastly different world into the one I live now. A family that was not particularly wealthy, where there was no strong narrative of education, of completion of educational tasks. There were not many books in the house. There was certainly not much appetite for discourse and pursuit of creativity and so forth. Things were fairly pragmatic. That's kept me very grounded over the years, because I have great admiration for that world, the world that I was privileged to grow up, the gritty world that I grew up in. Working in factories to put myself through university exposed me to a group of people who were intelligent, focused, knew how to have a laugh, took no one seriously, and least of all themselves, but lived gritty lives. I worked with those people and had conversations with them about politics and football and their marriages and their children. And I have always remembered those things and been grateful for them as I've led. I was also fortunate to grow up in a time in this country when university education was available.
Free, yeah.
And I would never have been able to do the things that have happened to me without that. And I'll always be thankful for that. And I feel a very strong sense that I need to give back a lot, because I have been given so much. And I don't, in many ways, deserve to be doing many of the things that I get to do.
In a world where everything is changing so fast and, technology is rapid, we don't even know the types of jobs that the students that you're, teaching at the moment will be doing. They haven't even been discovered yet. How do you provide for a future fit education, particularly for students and teachers? Because, particularly through primary and more so through senior school, we're getting them ready for a future that doesn't even exist right now. How do you prepare them for that?
That's such a great question. It's the soul of what every day looks like when we open the gates. Once upon a time, the remit expected of schools was clear. We were in the business of preparing students for a career that was likely to be lifelong, where their role as contributing members of society much more defined, and where gender gave you clarity about what was expected of you, most of those things have now gone. So if I cast my mind back, it was expected that many of us in my school would have gone to the steelworks to take up an apprenticeship or a traineeship and gone into that kind of world. That was normal. In others, it might have been agriculture or retail or something like that. That's gone now. And with the rise of the volatility of work and the impact of AI on what we're doing, we need to actually figure out two things. We need to figure out what David Brooks calls the eulogy character rather than the curriculum vitae character. So instead of resume virtue, we look at eulogy virtue, the ones that last, the ones that will leave an impression and an impact. You then need to talk about the formation of character and capacity sitting alongside each other. If you can create a sense of who you are and what are the virtues that constitute good character, how they express themselves in this world, and then you create generic capacities that can, from the time they leave, can articulate in numerous different directions. Because you've got a person, what a good virtuous character looks like and feels like, and some of that kind of self-discipline. We need then an education that's fit for that future, and it has to be about character and capacity fitting together. There's a lot more to say on that topic.
Do you think our education system overall is doing that, though? I mean, I know uniquely in your school you might be, but if you have a look at it, an overall standpoint, do you think the education system has the capacity to do that at the moment?
I think we're not funding what is needed nearly enough. I also think that much of our response to educational need is driven by fear. So, for instance, in the New South Wales Higher School Certificate, created in 1967, all of our families and then some and their grandparents indeed would have been familiar with that system. So it's now expected that that's what every student in this state can do. Other states similarly have a reluctance to change. We are fearful of change. We don't want to embrace change, but that HSC system created in 1967 is largely unchanged. You tell me another thing in the world that's largely unchanged since 1967. Yes, there might be some different syllabuses. Yes, there's some different weightings that go into the assessments, but in the final analysis, a strong state-based exit credential applies right across this country and mostly around the world. There's a set of knowledge and skills that we expect all our students to have, and we'll test them with a public examination to see where they rank. And off they go. And it just continues to strengthen that idea of a mechanized industrial model of learning. What scares me is that when the kids leave school, they get into a world that no longer applies that. So they're ill-equipped. And we're not brave enough to ask the question. And I think it's largely driven by fear, not rank conservatism. I think it's fear. Because if you let go and let schools and let teachers and let kids imagine their own future, we lose some control. That's making people fearful. In whom will they place their trust to educate kids in this country? In the long years I've been doing this kind of work, I cannot remember being invited by any form of government, either persuasion, state or federal, to have a conversation about the future of education.
I was just going to ask you that, Philip, because what you said earlier resonates with me. In terms of, we're afraid to change, but who drives the change? The change would have to be driven by teachers, to an extent parents, but mostly teachers.
Teachers and the students.
And are you being...
say also, with the risk of interrupting, employers.
Yes.
Universities and employers. But we're fearful of that. Many
But
employees.
who's fearful? Do you think it's the government that's fearful? Do you think it's teachers that are fearful? Is it a combination of everything?
It's all of the above.
Mm,
We are. It's drummed into us. It's taught to stay in our lane. To I did the HSC. It's good enough for me. It should be good enough for you. Get your head down
mm,
and study. Could I just digress with a slight
mm,
question? Or excuse me, a slight narrative. We took a robotics team to the United States to compete in the world champs. And we've been doing that for a few years now, and we've had great success. In all humility, we're ranked about number 3 in the world in these
mm,
competitions. We do
mm,
exceptionally well. Our students here design, code, and manufacture their own robots from scratch. Then they put it in a suitcase, disassemble it, put it in a suitcase, carry it to the United States and reassemble it and compete with their rules in their place using their measurements, feet and inches, not the
mm,
metric
mhm.
system. So if a part breaks down, we have to machine it on the spot to fix it. And we go out there and compete. We go and compete against students from other high schools and universities in the US who do this kind of thing as a subject. For us, it's a co-curricular activity because we can't fit it into the academic program because the academic program is too complex, too rigid.
Mhm.
There's no course that provides for that. It sent me home. I was talking to some American students in competition. Tell me about your school. Tell me about your world. There were significant US institutions walking around this event, including the US military. And they were saying, well, we get to put 4 to 6 hours per week as part of our academic program into this experience. My students are doing 4 to 6 hours on top of their
Oh,
existing
yes.
program.
Yes.
And it crossed my mind, wouldn't it be liberating to say that 2 of your required 10 units by year 12 can be what could be loosely called character and capacity education. Pursue
Mhm.
the things that you're interested in and love. So pare back the amount of content and the demand and allow students and their teachers to do something awesome effectively for 1 day a week
Mm,
that will build them up towards that uncertain future that is in front of us.
mhm.
My sense is that on the current trajectory, Australians will be excellent at mining and service provision, but not around creating something brand new. Many of our people who create new things find their way elsewhere. And I don't think that's a good vision for the country. I don't think it's the right vision for um, our students. And I think they, in their heart of hearts, despite the fact they want to cooperate in the main and they want to satisfy what the state is expecting of them and their parents are expecting of them. But in the final analysis, I think too, they have an ache and a yearning for more.
Yeah, of course they do. Of course they do. Particularly when they see it happening elsewhere.
Exactly. Now, I don't want to suggest in any way that we should be emulating exactly what the US or the UK or Singapore or China do with their education system based on PISA. There are vast differences between us, but I think there is more about our learners than they're able to show
Mm,
in the current system. But I've proposed this at an education summit and was not treated very seriously. And
interesting.
it was reduced, almost mocked by the next speaker who simply described it as, oh, how would you assess any of that? Therefore, it doesn't mean anything. There are questions about assessment that have to be answered, but don't dismiss it on the basis that it's hard to measure, because we all know in our souls, our kids who are taught to stay in their lane and keep churning out the cookies will be less than they can be by the time of 17 and 18. So much to offer the world.
Yeah, and I was just thinking the same thing, what you've just spoken about really, really impacts this next generation coming into the workplace and not in a positive way, unless we see the vision and actually have the courage to change it. This issue will impact generations, not just the kids who are in school right now, but generations of children to come.
Yes, and if you look at the current trajectory, you can see no real disruptor. And yet you look at the world of work and the world of learning,
Yeah.
the world of productivity, there are massive disruptors everywhere. I find that discordance very frustrating.
If I gave you a magic wand, Philip, and I said, you've got the opportunity to make all these changes, how would you start?
Yeah, a combination of devolution. So repose more confidence in educators and families and kids to actually imagine these things. At the same time, create a good handrail for the and pare back, but a handrail of academic expectations that repose on every student in Australia. Literacy, numeracy would be the two cases in point. Scientific literacy, economic and financial literacy. You might say those are the four things that then wrap around, or rather character education wraps around that authentic human experience. And we will get close, I think, by doing that. I can't see any real appetite. At the moment, it's a fairly mechanistic, reductionist view that I put in this amount of money, I should get this performance. Yeah, you might, but the truth is that we have to let children be children and let them grow in their own rate and pace. And they are at their most creative. They're most creative at school. And then they're taught to stay in their lane.
Yeah.
And schools have to be careful about this as well, Savannah. Schools belong to compliant extroverts. If you think about the most popular children, the most successful children at school, they're usually the compliant extroverts. They know how to comply with the rules and satisfy expectations of the teachers.
Very true.
And they're generally extroverts.
Yeah.
They're friendly, they're happy, they like social experience. How many people are compliant extroverts, really? Actually, not that many.
Not many.
A lot of our kids are introverts, think a lot about things, don't want to rock the boat, but equally they don't want to be sort of mindless consumers of whatever is pushed up to them. What about them? What are we doing for their voice? How do we structure our schools to be the best that they can be for them? I'm exercised about these things a lot, and I should imagine a school like mine would be as guilty as anywhere else because we live with the social pressures that we do. So these questions drive me. If I had a magic wand, we would have a national conversation about what are we trying to do, and all come to an agreement. And I had a wonderful decade on the New South Wales Board of Studies. I was representing a sector, but I could not tell you who was representing what sector sitting around the table because everybody was focused on the learning for New South Wales kids. That was an amazing experience. I just so honour that opportunity. Wouldn't that be awesome at a national level?
National level, yeah.
At the moment, we're often reactive. We listen to what the media may tell us is wrong with us. We unhappily compare ourselves at year 9 on PISA tests run by the OECD. We compare ourselves with, say, Singapore or Hong Kong or Taiwan or Estonia or whichever else is the top of the pops. It was for a long time Finland. And we say, oh, we're doing a bad job in Australia. And it's a narrative that creates clicks, but it diminishes us. And sitting behind that is a simple reality. At year 9, at age 14 or 15 in Australia, that's not a high stakes year. You're relaxed, you're enjoying your time at school, you're doing your first electives, and then you're told, sit this PISA test. You compare that to, say, the system in Asia, some Asian countries. At year 9, it's a critical pathway year. You go into, and similarly in European countries, it's a critical pathway. You go into specialist or vocational education pathways in year 10. Have that here.
No, we're not comparing apples with apples then, are we?
So we put ourselves on the same scale.
Yeah.
With countries. But then we see, negative comments about how poor Australia's education system is. And I don't believe it is at all, by the way, just quietly. I think it's excellent, but I think there are things to challenge. But if we compare ourselves, There has been, however, no national conversation about what do we want to do in international ranking. Instead, we just wring our hands and say, oh, isn't it awful? We see NAPLAN scores where literacy is poor, but then we think about the breadth and diversity of this country, the vast scale physically. And whose literacy is it? I'm on my soapbox here, I apologise.
No, I'm loving this. Keep going.
But whose literacy is it? So if I give a NAPLAN test to the children of Dupama Barker up in northeast Arnhem Land, who are bilingual, often trilingual. Their first language is First Nation experiences, Yolngu and they're given a NAPLAN test, which is set by a metropolitan examiner, essentially informed by the experience of metropolitan Australia, and they do poorly. We are therefore saying, oh, they're poor, they're weak students. Actually, they're not. They're really smart.
Yeah.
They're really capable, but the system tells them that they're weak because it's so culturally informed. We have to think much more creatively, imaginatively, and empathetically about what we're looking for in education. I have the fun of playing in this space every day. I have no simple answers, but I have a growing awareness of what we need to be doing.
I'm glad you brought that up because you do have a commitment to Indigenous education, and it's probably one of the most inspiring parts of the work that you do. Do you want to share more with how you reshape some of the schools and communities that you are doing the work with?
Thank you. We have two little schools in New South Wales and a school in northeast Arnhem Land. The intention is that the Australian narrative around First Nation education is generally about gap and deficit. And then our response to that is either throw lots of resources at it and then continue to be frustrated because the performance isn't rising, or we bring the children away from country, family, community, and put them into metropolitan boarding schools. The intent is good, but the net impact of that is uneven, to say the least. So what this vision is to empower the local community, learn on country, bring the parents into the soul of the education experience, honour First Nation knowledge and cultural awareness, and endow that with rich respect, instead of education being a command and control narrative that is a kind of post-colonial but nevertheless informed by colonial thinking, to celebrate ways of knowing that our First Nation people naturally bring to the table. Depending upon where the children are, if, say, they're in a more suburban or regional area, adapt your education expectations accordingly. So you might do stronger literacy and numeracy where the children are interacting much more with the non-Indigenous world. For the kids in remote Australia, raise up both a strong intellectual understanding of First Nation story and ways of knowing, and put that alongside the Australian curriculum and bring the two together at home.
At home.
With families, where the family's knowledge and expertise of language, of law, of cultural obligations sit alongside literacy and numeracy, and don't take them away from home. The impact has been profound. It's not rocket science, really. There's a whole lot of literature that sits behind these strategies, but a lot of that literature has been created in the last 5 to 10 years, and we started this a long time before that. So to some extent, the literature is helping us understand why this works. So we've got, in, say, northeast Arnhem Land, attendance rates of 70 to 90% in remote Australia, which is impressive. The children are advancing 1 year in their academic program for every year of life. These sound like small objectives, but they're big achievements for us. And we're actually then empowering the kids to make their choices about the future that they want. We're getting them ready to work in a world where mining will disappear or reduce. They need to be entrepreneurial.
Of course.
They need to think in an enterprising way about creating for themselves. That's worked really well in all of our schools so far. My first sortie into this was way back in 2007. in the
And
city.
what led you there? Oh, it was a city school that led you there?
And where that came from was just this deep awareness, as I shared initially, that I've been, in some ways, won life's lottery
Mm,
by the opportunities that were given to me that probably aren't available now in the same
mm,
way, not in the same way. To quote the psalm, what shall I give unto the Lord for his blessings to me? That's what
mm,
me into
mm,
that. And a school like this one and others like us, I would suggest, should go to the places where the nation has its deepest hurts and deepest anxieties. And First Nation experience in 2007, when we got this started first off, was one of those. And frankly, 20 years later, nearly, it's still the same.
Still the same.
It's still
Mm,
the same. The
mm.
need is very significant.
You're well known for building community, culture, and belonging. And we were going backwards and forwards to try and make some time to have this conversation. What I loved was I was told, look, I'm sorry, Philip isn't available at 9 a.m. in the morning because he's delivering handwritten birthday cards to
Yes.
each of the students. And I thought, oh my God, what a wonderful personal gesture for the student to get a personal birthday card. How did that start?
Well, thank you. You're kind to. It's almost an affectation these days, but I love it. I wouldn't give it up for anything. But it started way back when from previous people. Alistair McKerris from Sydney Grammar used to give out Caramello Koala, I think,
Oh, right. Okay.
to birthdays. And then I worked with the wonderful Roderick West from Trinity Grammar School. He did something similar. And I thought that was so touching that in a
Mm.
large community, someone's cared enough. What I
And remember that it's your birthday.
So I've added the writing of cards to that because when I took over a school, it was the head's practice to write some birthday cards to some people, and I thought, oh, that's really nice. I'll keep that going, and I decided that I would do that for all students, and then that I would go one step further and physically go to them,
Mm.
to their classroom, and once entering the classroom, go to their desk rather than have them stand up and come out the
Come
front.
to you. Mm. Mm.
Some students do that with alacrity, but others die 1,000 deaths to
Mm.
stand up in class and walk out in front of everybody else.
Yeah.
It's a torturous moment. I often laugh when people say, "Oh, in the real world, not in school. In the real world, it's like this." Well, I don't think there's anything more real than a school playground. Frankly, I think if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
learn a lot about yourself and everyone else and the grim realities of human interaction, go to them, because in that moment, in that interchange, I'm saying that I celebrate your life.
Mm.
Your life is worth stopping for a second and saying, it's good that you are here. It is good that you're alive. You are a blessing to this world. Choose life. Never take your life for granted. And there's an institution which typically will, as all institutions do, operate with a kind of cultural machinery, a kind of grammar that forces us all to do something. That individualization moment enables you to be who you are and
Mm.
recognize you don't have to be anything other than who you are for the world to say thank you.
Mm.
It is good that you're here.
I'm sure your students absolutely love when you do that. I want to talk about something that is not an easy topic, and that is the topic of bullying and tolerance in schools. And we've seen some terrible impacts of this where young students have taken their lives, and it happens way too often. How are you managing that in the environments that you work with the students that you work with? How do we build acceptance and tolerance, but also negate that social media bullying that so many of these poor kids have been subject to?
There's a great fear of missing out, isn't there now? We one of the IT people came to me and said to me the other day that there were 68,000 messages that had coursed through the school on a single day.
Wow.
How could that possibly be the case? Because we've got this social media, this device restriction. Somehow or other, 68,000 messages during the course of the school day on the school Wi-Fi were traveling around the school.
Across how many students, Philip? Just as out of interest?
Over 2,000. So
Yeah.
that's still a frightening
Not a
number.
lot. Yeah.
Individual transactions, and I'm still trying to drill down. What does that mean? How is that happening? Now everyone's got a device. You may put your mobile phone in your locker, but my point is not to be distressed about that, although I am. It's to actually recognize that connection is now part of the human expectation. It's almost who we want to talk to each other, and if we miss out, someone else needs to tell us what's going on. Why wasn't I on that message? And that's real for kids. The literature is saying that it's actually diminishing their sense of self, their confidence, their fear exclusion. Once upon a time, we would pass notes. Those days have long gone, and the detection is harder too. I've looked at human relationships chiefly about the exploration of strength, identity, and efficacy, if you will, power. And we need in our schools to set up systems where power is safe, where student power and agency, interagency, peer-to-peer, is fundamentally safe. You can do that with firmness and authority, but in the end, firmness and authority will only get you so far. You have to touch the soul and celebrate the importance of every individual life. There are some extraordinary stories of kindness. We've got a student here who is, very eccentric. We have many who are eccentric, but this person is very eccentric. And one of the most touching things at the end of year 12 is the affection with which everybody views that student. And I see that in numbers of schools, that we're much better these days compared to, say, when I grew up, of celebrating individual differences and quirkiness. We would once upon a time drive that out because it makes us feel uncomfortable. So those cases generally are pretty good. It's the ones who are, if you will, within the mainstream, a bit more normalized, and where the exclusion can become very damaging. And another student who she told me, and she fell into a profound eating disorder, and that nearly took her life. And I suspect she still lives with today, but it was triggered by some comments that others made about her physically on the bus, and she never got over it. And you could almost say, well, toughen up, it's life. People will say unkind things. We have to develop systems to allow student voice to create safety and create ways in which we can call out bad behaviour and deal with it. But we also have to say that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm taking the birthday card to you because you're a blessing to this world. Don't you ever forget that. Don't you forget that. The moment you say, I have no bullying problem, you've got one.
You've got one, yeah.
So you got to, every day, you've got to be awake to it and never give up, never stop.
How are you creating some of those safe places?
Yeah, we've created a speak out, shout out. So if kids use social media or various forms of electronic communication, they can anonymously or in a more obvious way name other people if they are thrilled about what they've seen. So that's the shout out section. Speak out is I'm uncomfortable, I'm being made feel awful. So I can reach out to a group of people that I trust, and they can tell me you don't have to go home miserable. So we've tried to do some systems. Language is important, so speak of it a lot. Don't be frightened to address bad things publicly without harping and haranguing kids, but just say to them, I've become aware of unkindness. We don't want that. That's not how we do things. This is what we do when we are being kind. This is what kindness looks like. This is what cruelty looks like. Are we together on this? The more you talk about normalize in a social interaction that there are behaviors that are harmful and there are behaviors that are helpful, and here are the differences. Kids need that now. And to some extent, parents are fearful at home. They don't quite know what to do. And then they become very protective, as I love them for that. I want them to do that. But they need to actually also enable the student to find solutions for themselves. They can't fix it. It's a disaster when a parent will charge into a student social group and, in a sense, exercise their own power to protect their child. It's a great and natural impulse, but it usually doesn't work.
There's always two sides to this issue, isn't there? There's the person who's making the call out and then the person who is being called out. How do you work with the person that's being called out, or the student that's being called out?
Very few people want to be nasty. Very few. Very, very few. In my experience, you appeal to their better angels as much as you can. You never use the you. You always try to search for the we. You use the Glasser sort of reality therapy. When you do this, it has this impact on me. Can we work together to change that somehow? If you exercise power to demonstrate power over another to force their behavior to change, you're unlikely to be successful these days. Once upon a time, power and position was enough. It's not anymore, particularly in egalitarian Australia. There is a sense in which your voice needs to be backed up by trust. Trust is so important. It's the adhesive that holds a community together. And if that's brittle in any way, if the school itself bullies its students, but says no bullying, then the kids will behave the way you'd imagine. They avoid and evade the whole system. So the school culture needs to be kind and demonstrate kindness all the time. I'm describing a nirvana that I'm still searching to reach, but we need to do it. So, for instance, I can't stand in front of the students and say, be the future that you imagine, if we don't do anything about it ourselves. But we say, where is the nation hurting? Many places, the refugee space is one of them. Indigenous experience is another. Your school has gone into those spaces to try to create change. We call on you now to, when you leave the gates for the final time, to be the change you yearn to see, reminding them always that you have much more about you than you ever thought possible. You have much more potency in your own capacity. Go out there and try. Doesn't matter if you stumble and fall and it doesn't work, but try. And that's what I want for our school. We don't need success. We just need to try, because often you'll succeed.
Phillip, I imagine there's a lot of students who leave your school absolutely grateful for the environment that you've created for them to learn in. Just having a very short conversation with you, I'm sure there are many, many students who walk out with their heads held high, very confident about the future they're about to go and embrace. I suspect that you do a lot of things very differently in your environment, and it works for you.
Thank you. We would certainly hope that, but I want them to walk out humbly. I want them to walk out knowing that they've had something incredible done now. Therefore, what will you do? I want them to at least have enough capacity. If you don't have capacity, no one will listen to your voice.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be good at doing things, if you will. We've got to pursue excellence, and it's okay to do that. But it doesn't mean that we get everything right. It distresses me that somebody may graduate and think, thank goodness that's over. Often what we're doing in the school years is like a long-term planting exercise. It's a tree that we're growing here that may take a while. And what has happened to you, it doesn't always make sense at the time. So we want them to have the wisdom and grace to be able to reflect on it. I love the word nostalgia.
Mm.
It's a quaint, almost romantic word, but I love it because associated with school is so much nostalgia. And the nostalgia in our lives gives us narrative. It gives us a sense of comfort about who we are. And we got through that time, and now I can get through the next because I got through that time.
Mm.
If it's gritty and not what we would like, even if someone said something unkind to me, we got through that together. We've forgiven each other. Now we're moving on to create a better world together. But I grant you, I'm an idealist. I've added a lot of pragmatism over the years. I've tried to defend the idealism along the way.
We all need idealists, Phillip. Now, you're working on a manuscript called One Life at a Time. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of this work in the First Nation education, and I haven't written it up properly. When I get little breaks, I apply myself to write what's now turning out to be about 110, 120,000 word manuscript, dealing with each of the phases. So from Gawara in the city to Darkinjung in the Central Coast, through to Narralindale in the Central Coast, and then finally Dupamar up in northeast Arnhem Land. What has happened is I've gone from city to regional to rural to remote experiences. Are there any similarities in the First Nation experience? Are there strategies that might apply to a range of different circumstances? And then how can I write that up in a way that's interesting, readable, where the lives of the people are honoured and the hard work of so many that have made these things possible is recognised and celebrated. And yet there's no sort of self-indulgence. Oh, isn't this awesome? I don't want to do that. I want to actually share. So that's taken a while. So it's incomplete, Sadhana. Thank you for raising it. Now you've just reminded me of how much
you've got to complete it now. You're putting this out in the public domain now, Phillip. So
yes.
you have to complete it. You're on notice.
Yeah, that's right. I'm up to the section on Dupama now. So
right.
This is a gorgeous story because the word Dupama means in Yolngu Mata, it means look up, look ahead, look up. And it was a word originated by the father of one of the great elders whose family signed the Bark Petition up in Yirrkala. And it sort of dates back to the 60s. There was a school that started in 1972 called Dupama College. All the Yunupingus and the Gurruwiris and those significant families up there who signed the Bark Petition sent their children to this school on Gukula, not far from where the Gama Festival is held now. Phillip McMahon, Prime Minister, opened the school in 1972. It closed at the end of the decade. And the families were always terribly sad that it closed. And so after a period of conversations between us, the yearning was to get it started again. So the last of the schools that I've been privileged to deal with anyway is up there in northeast Arnhem Land to revive the original school that started back in 1972 that the families wanted to see happen. And that's learning on country, learning in partnership between, if you will, Ballender and Yolngu ways of knowing, and turning into a coherent story. So all of that, if we can get it right, will enrich Australia. And that's what I'm trying to write up.
You're going to leave a wonderful legacy, Phillip, with all the work that you are doing. But we have come to a point in our podcast, slightly lighter. It's what we call the Spotlight Shuffle, where I have 20 questions in front of me. They're all different questions. And you get to pick a number between 1 and 20, and let's see what comes your way.
Oh, dear. Okay, 14.
Number 14. Okay. If you could whisper one sentence to your younger self before you took on your first leadership role, what would it be?
Oof, one sentence. Stop worrying. Stop worrying. Stop
worrying. It all works out in the end?
It probably will. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't. if I could digress slightly, I wrote the history of a school, early career, had that great privilege. And I did a lot of interviews, and in the process interviewed a long-serving headmaster of this school, served from 1944 to 1974. By that time, he was an old man, and we were walking along Avoca Beach together. He was a doyen amongst school heads, hugely respected, patrician sort of personality, wonderful intellect, an author, much admired. We were walking along, and he said to me, I had no notebook or anything. We were just chatting, and he said, "Do you know what they want? I want them to write on my tombstone." And I was appalled by the question. He has since passed away. I don't know if this is actually written on his tombstone or not. But he said to me, "I just want 2 words. He tried." He tried. And I've held to that a lot. He tried. So what I would have said to my younger self first time around is, don't worry, just try.
Just try.
Try.
Very nice. Your next number, you get another number.
I get another one.
Oh, yeah, you do.
Half of that. Most of the population choose 7. So the scale of 1 to 10 would choose 7. So
Okay.
I did 14. So I'll go back to 7.
Go back to 7. What's the hardest part of leadership that no one talks about enough?
Oh, boy, that's a tough question. Well, it's a brutal question, really. For me, it's loneliness. No one talks about that. It's loneliness. You're alone. You're never alone, but you're always alone.
I think a lot of leaders do say that it is lonely at the top. Question around that is, have you built a tribe of similar leaders in your industry or outside your industry that you can go and have these wonderful conversations that you and I have just had? And does that ease the loneliness a little bit?
A little bit, but I don't mean it's lonely at the top. It's not a phrase I would warm to. But sooner or later, decisions must be made, and some of them hurt. And my temperament is empathy, and so those moments are hard, really hard. And so yes, there are conversations to be had that ease that, but it's not even that, job alike. There are not many of you who do that work, so no one gets it. It's more fundamental than that. It's that in any given situation, by the time the matter reaches you, it's often a kind of binary moment where someone will hurt and someone will rejoice. And I find that incredibly, at a human level, incredibly lonely. Because not because nobody else ever does that. We all do that sort of thing all the time. It's just the way I'm wired up. I want everyone to be happy and to feel good and feel valued and feel that they've got a meaningful place in the world. But the message that they will get won't be that. It'll be that they've been chosen against. It's more fundamental than, I haven't got any mates.
I haven't got any mates. It's lonely at the top. All right, you get one more number.
Oh gosh. Let's go for number 2.
What's one future shift you think leaders, and I'd love you to answer it from your industry's perspective, aren't prepared for but should be?
I think at the heart of the work that we're doing is a paradox. We have a structure and people want that, but we have autonomy within the structure. There isn't really much conversation going on about autonomy within structure. There's not really much, how do I defend the culture and heritage of an institution, but ennoble individualization and choice? And I don't know that there's a coherent answer to that. I think it's actually, for me anyway, it's the way you do things. So celebrate story and heritage, but only in a way that ennobles somebody and lifts them up, so that I'm part of something bigger than me, but it doesn't overwhelm me. I grew up at a time when the loss of confidence in institutions, post-Nixon, was very profound. Post-Vietnam, post-Nixon. And nowadays, institutional trust is very low. And some institutional trust should be low because we've not done well for our people at times. We've covered up, we've moved our problems around, we've sought neat phrases and taglines more than authenticity. And yet there is great hope to be found in institutions that stand for something that's bigger than them, stands for kindness, because then it enables people inside that institution to express those feelings and say, if we can do that at scale at a national level, if we could create what our First Nations people could have taught us, how to welcome. So the Yolngu people, for instance, a fundamental definition for them is welcome. They welcome people, but they want you within their ecosystem to respect. And we kind of haven't done that well as a nation. There's a new national story to be created. How do we do that with a good consciousness of individualization?
A new national story we're privileged to have one of the oldest cultures in the world that we can learn from.
I've learned so much from them, and there's so much to learn. We have no idea in Australia what we've got. Our First Nation people are very willing to teach us. They want simply respect in return. And, we're fearful of that. And I don't know why, but that's a conversation for another time.
Now, before I let you go, and you mentioned earlier you've got 2,000 students at your school. How many cards do you write a day?
Oh boy, it would be. I generally write them on a Sunday afternoon, and it takes about 2 hours to write them. So there would be between 8 and 15 a day.
And each would have a personalized message.
Yeah, it's very important to do that. And then I pull up their pictures, so I make sure I know the face and those sorts of things. But look, it's not perfect. It's just a gesture. And
a good starting gesture, Joe, and it sends a wonderful message to your students. Phillip, thank you so much for your time. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and if I could take elements of what we've spoken about, or everything and sprinkle it throughout the education system in this country, it would be wonderful. But thank you for sharing what you have shared and your passion for the difference that you want to make and the work that you're doing, not just within your own organisation, but within the First Nations community, is so palatable. So thank you. Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Siddhartha, and thank you for honouring me by having the conversation. It's incredibly touching that you would take the slightest interest in what I bang on about. I really appreciate it.
Well, you bang on about some really cool stuff and good things. So, we love talking to people who make a difference. If you like what you've heard, please share, rate and review this podcast. And don't forget to share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. The producer of Future Fit Leadership is Maritza Barone from Guide Your Light Network. If you would like to reach out to me, please DM me on any of my social media platforms. I'm available for speaking at conferences or consulting to your business. Future Fit is created in partnership with Future Leadership, a capability ecosystem for boards and executives. If you'd like to join the community and receive a free takeaway each week, sign up to the Future Exchange app in my show notes. Thank you for having me in your space.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.